It's finally happening. After over a year of speculation, a new handheld has been announced out of the blue by Nintendo, Switch Lite. And yes, it is using the new revision of the Tegra X1 we discussed recently, internally dubbed Mariko and also known by the codenames T214 and T210B01. Bizarrely, European press have had no briefings or hands-on with the device whatsoever, leaving our friends and rivals in the US to bring us their initial impressions. But what we do know off the bat is actually quite a lot from both official and unofficial sources. As you may have heard by now, Switch Lite is an entirely new hardware revision of the original console, designed for the more price-conscious customer. The official $300 price point for the full console with detachable Joy-Cons and dock is now matched by this new $200 device. A lower price means less functionality though. The device is smaller, so the screen is smaller, dropping from 6.2 inches of the original to 5.5 inches in the new model. But resolution remains unchanged at 1280 by 720, 720p. And this is a Switch that does not switch, being entirely handheld in nature, so there's no dock in the package, no support for HDMI TVs, and that means you'll have a slightly pared back range of games to play. And then there's the lack of Joy-Cons. The integrated controllers means that tabletop play is, well, off the table, while some of the Switch's more innovative experiments like 1-2 Switch also won't work either. Oh yeah, and remember the cardboard Labo thing and its VR pretensions? Well, obviously that's not going to work either. There's no IR pointer support, and particularly upsetting is the lack of HD rumble, and I really hope that this doesn't mean an end for what is already a criminally overlooked Switch feature. There is some good news though, in that yes, there's a traditional Nintendo style D-pad, and if this fits into the same kind of mold as the old 2DS, we should expect this to be a somewhat more rugged device, something a bit more child-friendly if you like. Not of much interest to Digital Foundry, but definitely of interest to parents buying this new, cheaper model for their offspring. Still, that's a lot of cutbacks, isn't it? But I still rather like the idea of the device. Time and time again, we've lauded the Switch for providing brilliant handheld experiences, then ended up a touch disappointed when those games get blown up with varying results on a living room display. Switch Lite concentrates on what makes this system so unique. And I'm not talking about hybrid play here, but rather the ability to enjoy what I genuinely consider to be some of the best, most cutting-edge mobile games in the business. If you want the full functionality, the normal Switch isn't going away, but more on that in a moment. But let's spend some time looking at the machine itself, or rather talking about what's in it. And that all begins with the Mariko processor, a smaller, cooler, more power-efficient rendition of the standard Tegra X1. At this point, we can eliminate the possibility of new, more powerful silicon from Nvidia within the heart of the machine. Mariko is indeed an X1, not some kind of X2 variant or any other kind of more advanced Tegra hardware. The evidence does seem to suggest, although it's not confirmed, that we're looking at a 16nm FinFET design, a shrink of the original processor, down from its original 4-year-old 20nm design. Digital Foundry viewers will know that Mariko can run faster than Logan. The capability is there, but Nintendo has specifically ruled out any performance enhancements for the Mini. We'll have to wait until review time to get a look inside the unit and to see how cooling has been tweaked for the new model, assuming it has active cooling at all. But thanks to some poking around inside the Switch firmware, and also thanks to official documentation, we do know that Mariko requires less voltage to hit the established CPU, GPU and memory frequencies. There are obvious battery life implications here. The requirement for less power means that in theory, handheld gaming should last longer, right? Well, the power saving from a 20nm chip to a 16nm chip is significant, and the Switch obviously no longer has to worry about the additional batteries inside the Joy-Con. So more potential power savings there, but Nintendo itself is giving out conflicting signals on how much extra gaming you'll get out of a charge. First of all, the platform holder only talks about slightly longer battery life. The 2.5 hours to 6 hours of battery life on the standard model is now defined as 3 to 7 on the Mini. But then, as an example of a typical gaming session, Nintendo reconfirms 3 hours of Zelda playtime on a standard Switch versus 4 hours on the Lite. This isn't slightly longer battery life, it's an extra 33% of game time on the go. Well, sources familiar with the new unit are suggesting that part of the efficiency savings are being used by Nintendo in order to ship with a smaller battery in the Mini, saving money and indeed space within the chassis. The standard Switch has a 4,310 mAh battery, and unconfirmed reports, but based on good information, suggest that the battery is around 75 to 77% of the original's capacity. So the Mariko chip serves two purposes then. Yes, you get extra battery life, but we don't know the extent of it really until we go hands-on with it. But it seems that Nintendo's primary use for the process shrink with the Mariko design is to miniaturize the existing design, the existing battery. It's a lower cost unit, right? Hackers looking into the unit have also unearthed some details from the firmware using the same techniques that outed Mariko's existence way back in March 2018 when firmware 5.0 first emerged. Memory, for example, has seen a shift from LPDDR4 to LPDDR4X, offering some battery saving enhancements and also allowing developer units to deliver game makers 8 gigs of memory in their dev units as opposed to the 4 in standard retail units. And yeah, there's no memory bump here in production Switches, still 4 gigs. So think of the Switch Lite as something akin to the PS4 Slim or the Xbox One S then, but with a twist. Die shrinks on the main processor are often the mechanism by which platform holders can deliver smaller, lighter, more power-efficient consoles, and that's exactly what Nintendo has done here. But then there's a touch of 2DS in the design as well. Strip out features, simplify the functionality in the device and sell it at a knockdown price. Okay, so is that it? Given how much Mariko can potentially deliver, a pared back machine with cost cutting primarily in mind might be a very Nintendo thing to do, but it's hardly making the most of the new Tegra hardware, which we know can deliver higher performance. But this isn't the end of the Mariko story. Here's a look at an FCC emissions declaration that recently came to light. Here, Nintendo is telling regulators that a new version of the existing Switch hardware, not the Lite, is going to be released, and that it's essentially, well, pretty much the same as the current one. Except that, well, there's a new PCB, new NAND memory, and well, check that out, a new SoC. The Switch firmware only talks about 2 chips, Logan and Mariko, T210 and T214, so we can safely assume that this new Switch submitted to the FCC is indeed a Mariko-based product. So there's good news and there's bad news about that. The good news is that the Mariko GPU, as we previously explained, is capable of faster clock speeds, even if they're not used in the Lite model. Chip itself maxes out at around 1.27 GHz on the GPU, but Nintendo rarely runs at maximum frequencies. That said, a leap from a current docked 768 MHz to something closer to 1 GHz is not totally out of the question. The bad news? Well, according to Switch hackers reverse engineering the current firmware, this new model, while capable of faster GPU performance, still seems to run on the standard Switch clocks. There's no evidence of a higher frequency for Mariko units that are going to be built into the current chassis. That's not to say that things won't change, but that's the situation as it is in the current firmware. On the one hand, yes, of course, I'd like to see more power available, or even a user option boost mode similar to what we see on the PS4 Pro. On the other hand, realistically, if we are looking at 200 to 300 extra megahertz on the GPU, based on what we know of the Mariko spec, well, in percentage terms, that may well be a big upgrade, but it's probably not enough for Nintendo to go to the bother of adding new hardware profiles or for asking developers to add extra development time to support an additional performance mode over the ones that are currently available. So yeah, that's what the current system firmware suggests, but you know, that could change. But if it doesn't, the second Mariko switch could simply be a tweaked silent update. The improbably named Nintendo chief, Doug Bowser, has confirmed no other Switch model releases for this year, but this doesn't necessarily rule out a simple update to the existing machine. Whether this updated unit retains the existing battery, meaning significantly longer mobile playtime, or whether Nintendo opts for the smaller version found in the Mini, well, that remains to be seen. So, well, let's sum this up then. We have some idea for Nintendo's plans for the Switch in the short to medium term then. The Lite model is out there, confirmed and set for a September 20th release date. Meanwhile, the FCC filing confirms that the second model is based on the existing shell, and Nintendo itself is also downplaying that significance. So I could be wrong here, but my gut feeling is that this will be a silent update, similar to hardware revisions like the PS4 Pro CUH7200, which I consider to be a far superior machine to the launch model. Now, if there is an actual Pro Switch, as previously rumoured, a power switch if you like, well, there's no other hardware SKUs referred to in the latest firmware. So if it's happening, it's not happening anytime soon. And as to how this all plays out in terms of actual in-the-hand hardware, well, we'll just have to wait and see. We'll obviously be reviewing the Switch Lite and taking a look at any refreshed version of the current Switch as soon as we can. That's all from me for now, so please do give us a like, subscribe to Digital Foundry, and yes, do consider sharing our content. Ring the bell there if you are subscribed. It'll give you instant notifications of any videos that we post. And yeah, got to do a shout out here for the DF Patreon. Our work is often deep, intensive, and to put it frankly, YouTube alone won't pay the bills. Support the team more directly, and in turn we'll deliver pristine quality download versions of every video we produced. That's where I'm leaving things for now. Thanks for making it all the way to the end, if indeed you did, and just generally thanks for watching and supporting Digital Foundry. See you next time.